Welcome to the Late Show. I'm your host Tim Vince, and it's November the 8th, Wednesday, November the 8th. And just over 1 month ago, there was a terrible massacre in Israel, a kidnapping of so many Jewish families and individuals. And I thought it'd be appropriate if we dedicate this Late Show to a remembrance of October the 7th. Hoping you can join in with your emails. They'll come up on the screen. You'll see live at Revelation TV, and you can text in. I will also be interviewing Dan Shaham again, reflecting on what happened, some of the heroism which happened on October the 7th, and also some of the terrible acts. But just a general comment on remembrance. I think it was 2 Sundays ago I preached on Church Without Walls about the importance of remembering what God has done, the goodness of God, remembering the Sabbath, remembering the blessings that we have. But today we're going to remember something very terrible that happened, and Nathan has put together just a short sequence that just reminds us, just in case anyone is inclined to forget. It was only a month ago, remembering October the 7th. Thanks for being with us on this special Remembrance Late Show. It's worth just remembering again the closing lines of that sequence, that 6 million Jewish people were murdered during the Holocaust. We fought the tyranny of Hitler. This weekend we'll be remembering the lives that were laid down in 2 world wars. I'd like, in addition to your emails on the subject of remembrance, you to also reflect on how inappropriate it is for there to be any kind of demonstration, any kind of loud banging, shouting, campaigning on the streets of London when there's such a solemn national remembrance taking place. I'm staggered that there isn't even a basic law to say that this is a day that should be set apart for remembrance and not for sloganizing and cheering on terrorists. You might have some thoughts on that. I knew Dan Chaham over many years, and soon we'll be showing a second interview with Dan on what happened on October the 7th. It's difficult to go into too many details. You'll see in that sequence we just showed that we're showing the aftermath of what happened, but you can't imagine what it's like to be there in an early morning with your family in your home and to be raided in such a brutal and savage, inhumane way. And there aren't words for it. You may think, oh, well, you know, why can't we talk about something else? Well, I think 1 month after such horrific events, it's an appropriate milestone just to, especially on Revelation TV, for us to commemorate that day. And also, for those that think, oh, well, you're just focusing on one issue, it's of great relevance to all of us. It's of relevance to the whole of our civilization, our whole way of life, that just a generation after such horrors of the Holocaust, these things should happen again. And the whole world should take note, and the whole world is in many ways responsible for what's happened. Even though we know we focus on Hamas and say that they're responsible, but actually they've been encouraged by the world media, they've been encouraged by the United Nations, they've been encouraged by apologists for a narrative which says from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free of all Jews. They've maybe also been encouraged by the silence of folks like us and Christians who haven't spoken out enough. So I appreciate that you'll be watching, and it's quite a powerful interview with Dan Chaham. I'd like to first, so please do email in, and we might put on the screen the prompt for you to text in. But I thought it'd be good before interviewing Dan if we could just listen to a relative of a girl who's been taken, and as she makes an appeal to us and to others to just reflect on singing Happy Birthday and what that means when the person is not present.
I ask you now to take a moment and imagine the last birthday you celebrate with your family, the last birthday of your sister or your brother. Imagine they are not there. Imagine you are waiting for them, but they just don't come. Imagine you have no idea where they are. You can't hug them, you can't write, you can't sing happy birthday song. Please imagine this, because for me, it is a reality. Today is my sister's birthday. I stand here before you, alone, not knowing where she is and unable to hug her. She was kidnapped from her home, taken from her husband and child. I'm asking you, don't leave me alone. This is the time for humanity to stand strong and defeat terrorism. It is our time, your time, to help save lives. I'm asking you now to stand by my side. Together, our wish can become a prayer. Please join me in the simplest song, a happy birthday song, a strong, loud voice of my beloved sister.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alden. Happy birthday to you.
I'm joined again by my good friend Dan Chaham. He's an Israeli diplomat, currently based in Jerusalem. Dan, welcome back to The Late Show.
Thank you very much. Shalom from Jerusalem.
And we've just seen a very moving article of a girl asking for folks to remember when they sing Happy Birthday. Dan, what are your feelings as an Israeli watching that moving personal testimony?
We are all in a state of shock and traumatized. The cruelty of the attack on that day and the fact that it's been a month, 30 days from the time in which over 241 people were taken away into an unknown place in Gaza, held hostage with no news. They do not allow the Red Cross to visit them, so we don't know if they're okay, if they have medicine, if they have food, what is happening with them. So this is a huge worry for us. We are all anxious. We want to know if they're well, and we want to see them back home as soon as possible. These are civilians, babies, elderly, Holocaust survivors, women, or entire families. The enormity of it is beyond us, but we will do whatever it takes. We've rescued one. 4 more have been sent in 2 different occasions, and we are very firm that we are going to do whatever it takes to bring them home.
Dan, my involvement with Israel over many years, taking nearly 6,000 Christian pilgrims over there, has very much focused on not forgetting what happened in the Holocaust. And at Yad Vashem, we not only remember the 6 million plus who perished, 1.5 million children, but we stand in the valley of communities and we see how many 5,000 plus Jewish communities across Europe were either eliminated or experienced terrible massacres. And I just wonder whether during this interview we could focus on what exactly happened on October the 7th, so that people will not forget. You've said it's only four weeks ago, but people, I think, are already forgetting what happened.
Yes. We don't forget. We are a nation that doesn't forget. We have experienced the most atrocious attacks since the Holocaust. We have been attacked on a Saturday, on one of the holidays, Simchat Torah, in which we are joyous that we start reading the Torah from the beginning, the book, good book that was given to us as a guide. And on that day, 3,000 terrorists, ruthless terrorists. I don't know what name can describe the atrocities that they have inflicted on civilians. The graphic videos that we have seen, all of us in Israel and around the world, human beings can do that. So
we can certainly, yeah. I was going to say that some of the language that's used, you do, as you say, you find it difficult to find the words, but it's certainly savage, it was brutal, it was a massacre, they are terrorists, and certain words do need to be used. I would even use the word demonic. There's something almost beyond humanity to what happened.
I never used this word before, but actually this is the right. It was demonic. It was not just murdering. It was torturing in front of family members, doing atrocities that, and we've been through the Holocaust. We know what atrocities can be. And even that, the cruelty of it, even Daesh, ISIS, didn't do those things. It was as if evil in its purest form, a demonic, as you said, was out to bring their agenda of death to us. There were many brave family members that fought. They fought in multiple ways. I will just tell you one. An elderly gentleman of 82 years old, he knew that if they will come, they will kill his entire family, his wife, his two daughters, and his one grandchildren. So they told him, why don't you go into the safe room? I will be sitting here pretending. He was very much into the arts and music, and I will sacrifice myself so that they will think that I'm only one here, and they will not keep on looking. And that's what happened. And then you could hear stories of husbands fighting for hours against dozens of people trying to get in and brutalize and kill Jews. And I'm not talking about Israelis only, Jews, but also they've killed Muslims, they've killed Arab Israelis, they've killed Muslims from Jerusalem and from Bedouins. A lot of Bedouins were murdered. These were, as you said, a different kind of human
evil.
Of evil. And I have to say that if it wouldn't be for the bravery of police officers, of in every one of those kibbutz, we have a group of 6, 7, 8 people that are the first reaction. Whenever they were informed, they could organize themselves quickly and defend themselves and prevent these brutalities from happening. But in places in which the attack was too soon, because they were the first and very close to the fence that was brought down, then people lost their lives by the hundreds. So we have lost about 1,400 people on that day. Some of them were soldiers and police officers that fought and fought in order to stop them from going further up into Israel and into bigger cities. And they were able, in a most heroic of ways, to stop them with their own bodies. Now, we have such stories of heroism of drivers, that Arabs and Jews that went in and rescued people from the party.
There was one in particular, wasn't there, Dan, where we can see the graphic of multiple return journeys into the danger zone. It's incredible heroism.
Yes, it's a guy that has a sort of a van, a minivan for like a minibus. And when he lives nearby, and when he heard that the shootings, the missiles to begin with, and then shootings, he realized that something is wrong. He started going there, and he pulled out 120 people.
Wow.
Let me explain to you that in that party, there were 3,000 partygoers. There were 3,000 young people that came with the only agenda of love and peace. And if it wouldn't be for the bravery of some, we would have been in a much more difficult situation. So,
Dan, I wanted to go into detail because I mentioned the value of the communities at Yad Vashem, and I think when we look at that, the map, which doesn't just say, oh well, you know, in the general area there are 1,400 people who perished. It goes into the detail of every one of those terrorist acts, and I just wonder whether I could read some of the communities which were attacked at that time, if I can find it on my list. But we can look on the map and see there was Re'im. It says 270 plus were killed at the Re'im Music Festival.
Yes.
Be'eri, there was 117 plus who were killed in the massacre there. Nahal Oz, 100 plus were killed. Kfar Azar, in the massacre there, 52 plus were killed. At Zikim Beach, 35 plus were killed. At Nir Oz, 25 plus were killed. At Netiv Ha'azara, another massacre, 21 plus. At Alumim, 16 plus. At Holit, 13 plus. At Kisufim, the massacre there, 14 plus. Yahini, 7 plus were killed. Ein Hashlosha, sorry for pronunciation, another massacre, 5 were killed. At Nirim, 5 plus were killed. And at Nir Yitzhak, 5 plus were killed. Of course, they're just, to some people, statistics, but each of those are personal tragedies and families which have been crushed by this terrible evil. I just wonder whether, Dan, you could talk about some of those kibbutzim that were living in peace on October the 6th.
These atrocities were conducted against kibbutzim, people that live near the border, but in a cooperative way raised a variety of crops and had industries in which they employed people from Gaza. These communities wanted to move forward with coexistence. Some of those people that were murdered or kidnapped were people that were taking people from Gaza to hospitals in Israel. These were people that were committed to coexistence and to peace. You could not ask for better communities to have in one's country. And these were attacked. Some of those communities that you mentioned lost 25% of their population. So 100 people is out of 400. And 1,400 people in Israel, which has about 10 million people, if you take it to the UK, which has about 50 million or so, multiply it and understand what it means to the fabric of society here, to lose 1,400 people in one day, in one half a day. It's enormous break in our perception of can we live with Gaza by our side and hope for coexistence.
And I think, Dan, it's worth pointing out that I don't know out of those that were killed how many were Israeli Arabs, but a very high proportion. And also, you mentioned earlier how Israeli Arabs were among the heroes trying to save the Jewish people.
Very much, very much. These are people that live among us and understand exactly what Israelis stand for. It's a democracy. We respect a person for his human value. It's not about their religion. And these people were not only saving to the best of their capacity or murdered for no good reason or shot at. And wife, a mother of 9 kids, a Bedouin Muslim woman, was shot after she identified herself as being a mom. They shot her. These perpetrators, these terrorists, had no respect for human life whatsoever. It's like ISIS on steroids.
Dan, one element of this tragedy is the not just demonstrations, but celebrations that took place even on the day of the massacre in capitals and towns across Europe and the United States. What's your comment on that? Just seeing the disconnect between those who are supporting and celebrating in the Western civilized world.
It's an abomination. There is no other word for it. People that are celebrating the slaughtering of 1,400 people, of people, young people that were in a music festival, dancing and wishing for peace, of people that had no intention but to continue to spread love and light into this world. If anybody celebrates that, if anybody supports that in any way, shape, or form, and thinks that in that way he or she are supporting anything good, they need to look again into their lives, into their ideas, because if any religion is supporting you to hate somebody, I don't know what is that. And that Hamas has done on that day will be remembered. And I think that people will need to look back into those days in which they've celebrated or supported it and ask themselves, what would I have done? In this point of time, we have the most cynical abuse, not only of the people of Gaza that are serving the Hamas leadership, which is corrupt, as human shields, but we have some gullible people in the West that are thinking that Hamas is helping the Palestinians. Hamas is ISIS. And I cannot understand, if somebody was against ISIS, why they are supporting it when the same things are done to Israel. So there's no logic in that behavior. There is no, I would say, humanity in supporting it. And to all means and purposes, we know who our friends are now. We know in that moment when we were in our weakest point, who stood up with us and who kept on, going on their I would say, a monochromatic understanding of reality.
I have a quote here, Dan, from Rabbi Shmuley, which is basically expressing what you've said. I can't explain how it feels to hear people worldwide cheering for your extermination.
Yes. If somebody is thinking that Hamas, or to say from the river to the sea, when you're saying from the river to the sea, you're saying gas chambers. You're saying destruction of Israel. So anyone who doesn't understand what is Hamas, go and understand what is Hamas and what they stand for. And if you don't, we can share with you what they've done. So to all means and purposes, if you are supporting or chanting or doing any of this rubbish behavior, one needs to stop, and somebody needs to tell you that what you're doing is not only harming Israel, democracy, and human decency, but you're harming the Palestinians that live in Gaza. So if this is your job, it's not a good thing to do.
And there's another contrast I could bring in. The Hamas leadership are not in a bunker in Berlin as Hitler was. And, Hitler, for all his evil, he went and was part of the final days and destruction of his people, the tragedy that it was. But the Hamas leadership are making billions of dollars out of this tragedy.
Yes. Forbes just came out, the front page, and they've shown what kind of money this leadership has. Mash'al.
5 billion. 5 billion.
Yes, and they live in Qatar. Them and their families are living in Qatar, while all of us, and I mean all of us, are suffering from that they have inflicted on this world. So all I have to say is that these hypocrites that are staying in fancy hotels and murder others, they bring so much sorrow to us and to others all around us. And they've done it time and time again, but it will stop. Israel will uproot Hamas. We will do whatever it takes to avoid civilian casualties. Humanitarian aid is going in to Gaza. Civilian population has the full capacity to go south and be protected while we fight those terrorists. We are not in the business of harming civilians, but we will fight terrorists according to the international law, and that's what we have done. And everybody who's looked into it said that we are obeying international law. That said, we will drive with all our might to uproot this evil from the region.
Now, Dan, thank you very much for going into those details. I think folks really do need to know. We're going to end this interview on the Late Show talking about the hostages, and we'll end with a very moving song that describes their situation. Just in the last couple of minutes, could you just talk about the hostages and their predicament so that we can pray for them?
Right now we have 241 people, probably underground, afraid. Nobody knows where they are, and they haven't spoken to anyone but their captors. I'm talking about babies, children of 1 year old, boys, girls, people that have been traumatized. We do not know if they are tortured, if they get their medicine. Some of them are elderly. We need your prayers. We need your voice to speak out against this evil. This thing cannot be something that only Israel can deal with. The entire world needs to come together and say these people must be freed. They're not a bargaining chip. They're not nothing. They need to be released. This is a crime against humanity, and we will prosecute those that have conducted it. We will reach them. We will bring them down, and we will fight this evil with all our might. If one thing has happened, is that we are unified, and we will bring those hostages back. It's the number one priority for us to crush Hamas and to bring the hostages back home. They belong with us. We will care for them, and I hope that the viewers and everybody else that can come up with any prayer, help, and raising their voices for Israel, against Hamas, for life and against death. Thank you so much for inviting me, Tim, to this show. It was important for us to speak and to tell the people around the world what has happened, and to know that we have friends around the world that care for us in Israel and for the Jewish people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Bless you.
You that knows the pain of man, who can bring the broken, brings light in darkness, makes peace in judgment. You that guides my soul, shrouded in the foam, forgives and forgets, believes and accepts, who is now and always will, who brings life and resurrects with open hands, with warm embraces, and if you let me see who am I to be, I feel like a stone washed upon the shore. Tell me that you will care for me. I feel for my life. Promise me that I won't disappear. Oh, 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 oh. Promise promise me that I won't disappear.
Thank you so much, those of you who are able to watch that interview. We've had quite a lot of emails in, so let's read some of them in order. Eddie, thank you for, I noticed you've written twice, but this is your first one. The people accusing Israel of committing genocide against the Palestinians have no answer to those who point out that Gaza's population was 400,000 in 1967 when Israel took it over, and was 1.3 million in 2005 when Israel left the Strip, which means the population more than tripled under Israeli rule, which does not bespeak a genocide. The population of Gaza is 2.2 million today, so it seems that the Israelis have not done a thing to promote a genocide in neighboring Gaza. In fact, for a genocidal state, Israel has a most incongruous history. Very well put. Catherine, good evening. I'm deeply saddened at the demonstration on Sunday. My heart can't comprehend what this country has become. And thank you, Revelation TV, for taking the brave and courageous stand in these days of evil, for voicing what is in our hearts. For we British have been silenced. Absolutely correct. And Joy writes, this violence makes you sick that any human could do these things. Animals would not do what they have done. How horrible. Absolutely. I think I used the word demonic, and you saw Dan's reaction. He doesn't come from a Christian background, but you can be secular and you can see there's something that's otherworldly about what has happened. That absolute terrible evil which happened on October the 7th. Les writes this quote from Martin Niemöller, Pastor Martin Niemöller. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. What an absolutely telling, powerful message, a warning to us all. And Sveta writes this, thank you, Revelation TV, for standing for Israel, and also for your prayers for Gaza and its people. Yes, Jesus told us to pray for our enemies. It's so hard. Thanks be to our Almighty God for giving us his Son. Hallelujah, what a refuge. That is the time, and the time and the circumstances will show inside out. Thank you for all your work for God's kingdom. Thanks for writing that one. Deb, bless you, Tim. I know your heart is heavy, as is millions who are traumatized by the horrific Holocaust in Gaza. Thank you, Tim, as you come before us, fearless, tired and weary. Yeah, do you know, it has been emotionally draining because you prepare for some of these programs, and some of the images and the stories are shocking. And having visited the Holocaust Memorial, Yad Vashem, on many occasions, and especially that memorial to the communities that were lost, you realize that this wasn't just one assassination or one crazy individual, terrible though it was. And by the way, on both sides, you know, the Baruch Goldstein in Hebron, there was a kind of massacre. It was one crazy individual, Yigal Amir shooting Rabin. Terrible what happened, but this was something on another scale, and it does it distorts reality to try and diminish it, or as as we've seen these terrible protests, if we have time, I might show you what's been happening in Berlin. For those who say, oh yeah, it's just freedom of speech, there's something on another level. If we get time, we might show that. Now, Ian writes, I'd like to correct a major evil misrepresentation by the corrupt media. They said EDL are thugs and Palestinians are mostly free speech activists. Furthermore, majority of Palestinians, and I use this term lightly, as no such people exist. Well, Ian, they sort of do identify. We're living in a world where people can be whatever they identify as, and so they do exist in the sense that they identify as Palestinians, but historically there's a tenuous link. They are terrorist sympathizers. The EDL, who are far from perfect, are British patriots who are liberals, and you say you respect Tommy Robinson, Britain first, and no Christians like yourself who do. Finally, I believe the UK something be far better place if we had a person like Tommy Robinson as our Prime Minister. And then we could get rid in our nation of Islamic extremists. Patriotism is not racism. I do agree with that. I'm still grieved about this demonstration taking place on Remembrance Sunday. Eddie, this was your second email, which you make a very good point. On November the 11th, you are opposed, Tim, to a Palestinian march on November the 11th because it's disrespectful to our brave servicemen who lost their lives in wars. On the same afternoon as the march, there will be over 100,000 people attending Premier League games in London at Arsenal and Crystal Palace. That is actually a really good point. I do think that, I mean, Israel have this collective memory and they have this national memorial, the Yad Vashem, and everyone respects that. It looks as though in our country we've become so fragmented that people don't know what to respect, and they don't respect much, and the police they certainly don't respect because they sent out a warning asking for people politely not to come to the demonstration. It was completely ignored. Mr. M writes, half of this country has fallen for Satan's lie that they think it's the Jews that's bombing them and it's Hamas. They use their own people as human shields, call them the Nephilim because in the Bible it says they were demonic, not even human. That's an interesting point there. And then this is Michael writing. I saw the Archangel Michael in there as well. I'm so angry with the conundrum we Christians live with, Islam. Why is Gabriel two-faced when you read the Quran and compare it to the Bible? I believe the gospel is the fruit of evolution, and like the story of the devil, I believe that things are not good in the kingdom of heaven. I believe that the war with Michael winning has not yet occurred, and I believe that Islam is an enemy of God. That takes a bit of unpacking. I can't unpack everything on this short program, but I'm trying my best to read all your texts. Lewis writes, I might be in the minority and thus in this view, but I do hope far right take to the streets and sort out the terrorists on our streets. I think we have to be so careful, Lewis, because the action and reaction and the like, and escalation, we don't know what can come upon us. But I think I should show, if it's possible, just to put this in context, when you have a large demonstration of people, I've got a short, so I've got a short clip which was sent to me by my in-laws in Germany, very scared about what's happening in Germany. And it's a clip of a march down in the main streets of Berlin, and it looks like revolution. It reminds me of the revolution of October 1917, where they stormed the Winter Palace. It's things are happening on that scale. Civilization is actually in a very, very shaky moments, and so for our prayers, if we can get that, I might show it later. But you write about the poppy man who's punched in the face, Lewis. A Jew killed in the UK by Muslims. Poppy Memorial in Rochdale destroyed. No action taken, but the far right are the bad guys, you write. Now, there does seem to be a different approach by the police, and I think it may be just purely the numbers, that they do not want to have an uncontrollable situation on the streets of London, so they basically have caved in to threats and intimidation. We might show that later. It's not really to scare, but just to say this is really happening, and we have to demand more from our politicians and those who are supposed to be protecting us, protecting our families and our streets. Mary in South Wales writes, "Your channel walks in such serious error regarding those that God warns us about in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. I think you are referring to the synagogue of Satan, which was a special description in those letters in Revelation of those who are persecuting Christians. I'm not quite sure where you're heading with that, but you write, Palestine lived in peace up till 1948, and many were Christians, 80% in Bethlehem in 1920. If I might just say, I was in Bethlehem in the year 2000, and I was physically there in Manger Square, and saw all the Christmas decorations taken down, and not by the Jewish people, but by Islamic Jihad. And I asked, what's that? There was one massive sign across Manger Square that just said, Jihad wishes you a Merry Christmas, after they have basically killed and intimidated, and by the way, killed friends of mine. I was working on a project to help build a school, and the architect was murdered and gunned down. And by the way, the BBC it was mentioned hardly at all in the press at the time. Anyway, you write, Palestine lived in peace up until 1948. Oh, I've already read that, sorry. That is questionable, by the way. I'm sorry even to be smiling. It's not historically accurate when you think of the Hebron massacre. By the way, on a similar pretext in 1929, where Jews again were massacred on a falsehood that they were trying to destroy the Temple Mount. Why would they do that? And by the way, Hamas, they have these pretexts of, trying to protect the Al-Aqsa and all of that. It's just not true. Anyway, finally, you say, even Ron Paul admitted last month that the CIA and Mossad created Hamas to bring down Yasser Arafat and for a constant excuse to commit genocide on the poor people of Palestine. Well, that's a bit of American politics there. I think if you're determined not to remember what happened and to try and weave in a conspiracy theory, a bit like Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, you can write your own narrative. But the story of Hamas goes back to the same devils who were there under Haj Amin, the Mufti of Jerusalem, and a lot of it is based on lies. Muslim Brotherhood, look at your, just look at your history books. Okay, so now we have Les. Yeah, I don't think we'll show the protest because we don't have the sound and it doesn't have the same impact. But here Les writes, the thief comes with the sole intention of stealing, killing and destroying, but I came to bring them life, and far more life than before. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd will give his life for the sake of the sheep. This is an anonymous text. That was a wicked pagan festival your New Age guest Dan describes as dancing for light and love. I think he mentioned peace. You call yourself a Christian channel. What a joke. Well, maybe you should just tell us who you are rather than just an anonymous swipe. But I think that it's quite right for us as Christians to stand with the Jewish people, especially at such a time when so many are slaughtered. And by the way, not slaughtered because they read the Torah every day, not slaughtered because they keep Shabbat or kosher, slaughtered because they're Jews. And amazingly slaughtered because irrespective of whether they want peace with the Palestinians, irrespective of whether they want the two-state solution, they were slaughtered. So I don't think it will. Yeah. By the way, let's just show this a picture of what happened. You would have, if you've watched our mornings, we've discussed it. Where it's in the newspaper headlines yesterday, I think. So a 78-year-old chap selling poppies is punched by protesters. These are people who absolutely despise our a nation's history, and they're the people who are going to be out marching this weekend. I can tell you I'm totally opposed to it. Deb said, Jesus is coming back very soon. World, wake up, be ready. Satan's army will be no more. He shall avenge the innocent. He is now the warrior king, ready for battle, waiting to be united to his army. We're almost there. Mary says, words can't describe the massacres that happened on October the 7th. I've heard of dreadful ways they murdered babies. As for the march that is being allowed this weekend, my daughter and son-in-law will be at the cenotaph, so I pray for our Lord's protection on all that are there. Deb also writes, start a world prayer chain. It was a world prayer chain that ended the debt crisis in the third world. Hope this is possible to do, Tim. I think prayer is really important in these days because it is a spiritual problem that we're facing, and the war in the heavenlies that came out in an earlier email seems to be breaking out on earth in many different ways. Yeah, I think we have got sound now, so I'd like just to play this. It's very short. There's some very loud chanting in German, and you get the sense. I don't need to describe it. I think you get the message. That was in Berlin, and you know, where do you draw the line on the freedom to protest? And people say, oh well, that's what the veterans fought for, you know, for the freedom to protest. Did they really fight for people to demonstrate in such an insensitive way on Remembrance Sunday and the Remembrance weekend on the Saturday? I don't think so. Arnie writes, those who call for a ceasefire have a hidden agenda to see Hamas survive and to see Israel thwarted. Sue says, thank you for the program and giving us the truth. The Bible says so much about Israel and the truth is there. Shalom from Sue. And this is anonymous, we can forgive the Arabs for killing our children. We cannot forgive them for forcing us to kill their children. We will only have peace with the Arabs when they love their children more than they hate us. That's a quote, I think, from Golda Meir, a quote as opposed to directly from her. Andrew writes, I wrote to the Times of Israel today, reminding them of the covenant Israel has with the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and how when as a nation they turn away from God in disobedience, that they are punished. I added that when King Solomon dedicated the temple, he declared that in that place, if the people turned back to the God of their fathers, he would forgive and heal their land. I suggested that a day of prayer be called in the land of Israel a day of returning to their God and a day of calling upon him for help. That's from Andrew. Thank you. I think I might just end for Mary, who wrote these scriptures from Isaiah chapter 42, talking about the Jewish people who in Romans 11 it says that God has given them a spirit of stupor. It's a very powerful chapter in Romans. But here in Isaiah 42, I will lead, verse 16, the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places smooth. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them. And to those who trust in idols, who say to images, you are our gods, you will be turned back in utter shame. So this is our prayer. Thank you very much for everyone who has been writing in. Les just quotes Isaiah 40. It's a very special psalm. Sorry, I can't read all of your emails that have come in. I hope, like me, you will join in this remembrance. We couldn't have a minute's silence during this show, but maybe after this show you can have a minute's silence to remember those who have been lost on October the 7th.